All right, welcome everyone. I'm Darlise, aka Darveloper. I'm the developer marketing manager here at Devpost. For anyone who's newer to me and to Devpost, Devpost is the leading online platform and community for hackathons. So it connects millions of developers and builders with companies and nonprofits and governments that host coding competitions, building competitions, design competitions, everything tech competitions. So both online and in person. Quick context on the Agentic Cinema Hackathon itself, which is why majority of you are here. If that's not why you're here, I love that you joined anyway. Hopefully we can continue to convince you to join. So in case you're getting oriented, this is going to be a hackathon from the Google Cloud Partnerships team, where you're building a functional AI agent powered by Gemini and Google Cloud Agent Builder. So we're looking to solve real bottlenecks across entertainment and the media world. So think filmmakers, think screenwriters, studio crews, or fans. Do we have any letterbox people in the house? Because I'm a big letterbox person. If you can create a solution that leverages the technology we're talking about today and that application, I would love to see it. But we'll talk about that later. All right. So this brings us to today, which is the first of our build sessions. It'll be the IBM build session. So we're going to be talking about IBM Bob with Richard Boyd. So I'd love to introduce Richard Boyd and let him take it away.
Right, awesome. That was a great introduction. Thank you, Darlise. Yeah, my name is Richard Boyd. I'm a developer advocate here at IBM. Today, we're going to talk about IBM Bob. Uh, I guess the best place to start is kind of what is Bob? Bob is an IDE that is, we'll call it a fork of VS Code, the open source version of VS Code. I believe it's called Codium or Code OSS. There's a open source core module of VS Code that VS Code uses, and several other companies have forked that and kind of augmented it in a way that's kind of unique to them. IBM is no different in this regard. The version that they've created is called IBM Bob. Somebody had asked kind of what models does Bob use or how is it different than other models? Uh, Bob uses a mix of models behind the scenes. It looks at the type of request that was received and routes the request to an appropriately sized or appropriately capable model, right? If the thing is you ask it a very simple knowledge question, you might go to a very cheap model. If you ask it a very tough, like deep research question, it might need to go to a more performant but more expensive model. So Bob handles the routing to make sure the correct model gets the correct prompt to strike that right balance between cost and effectiveness. Um, Sounds like a lot of hand wavy kind of marketing talk about kind of what is Bob, what does Bob do? But today, what I'd like to try to do, so I'm going to start by saying the thing I'm going to do in the session today I've never done before. So I don't know if it's going to work. So we may get halfway through it and realize that I have made a terrible mistake, which is fine. That's what hackathons are for. You take a new idea, it's a little bit bold, and you see, will this work? And getting an answer that says no, no, this will not work is totally acceptable. You learn something along the way, and then the next hackathon, you know what doesn't work, and then you try something else or you improve on what you had attempted. So uh, I have started my career, I'd say when I was 6 years, oh my God, six, 7 or 8. I was very young. Do a lot of like tinkering with, has anyone ever seen those kits where it's like a 201 science experiment, like electronics kit? It's got these little like springs that you bend the spring, you put a wire under it, you let the spring bend back, and you can like light up an LED or do a little switch or a buzzer. Throw like a thumbs up in the either reaction or in the chat if you've seen one of those. That's where I started with like my like STEM background. And oh yeah, stepping on the piece is bad. Yes. Yeah, those wires they really hurt if you step on them because they're real rigid. So I've done a lot of work with I think what they call like practical effects. I had a friend that had these like football helmet design things that he was taking a bunch of pictures of it and trying to 3D model it, and I built a thing that like auto rotated. You see a lot in like filmmaking. People talk about like practical effects. It's kind of what came before computer graphics, where you've probably seen photos from behind the scenes of the original Star Wars movies where they had like a scaled down version of like the Death Star or the Millennium Falcon. These are things that are called practical effects. It's like an actual physical thing that is filmed that they do stuff to through forced perspective and other cinematography tricks. It looks different than what it is. Um, and what I'd like to do is I have an Arduino, which is just like a single board computer. Let's see if it's in focus or not. Hopefully it focuses. Um, I also have like several of like the open source, like, let's see if it'll focus. Hopefully it focuses. These are just like really small, very cheap, called single board. I don't think they're called single board computer. Integrated circuit. I don't know. There's like a specialized term for it. I think a Raspberry Pi is a single board computer. Microcontroller, there it is. Leanne Branch, there, 10 points for Leanne for getting the right answer. Yes, microcontrollers. That was the term I was looking for. Um, so Arduinos, they use C++ and they use the Arduino IDE. It's a custom built specific IDE just for Arduinos, which makes it tough to write code for them using an AI assistant because that IDE doesn't have a built-in AI mechanism. But because it's C++ and because a lot of these language models have very sophisticated kind of reasoning capabilities, what I'm going to try to do is have Bob help me write some Arduino code that I'm then going to try to load onto this device during the session today. And we're going to use the notion of what's called a spec-driven development with IBM Bob to see if we can make this happen. And along the way, we're going to learn how Bob works and the ways you can use Bob. And the idea that I'd like everybody to leave with is that what Bob's superpower is that it helps you understand kind of newer frameworks where you may not be deeply versed in the specific way that a framework handles race conditions or logic or some branching statements or some of these other items. Uh, so that's the goal for today. That's what we're gonna try. I'm gonna start sharing my screen. If at any point the screen is too small to read, just put a comment in the chat and I will uh, adjust it. And yeah, anyone has any questions along the way, there's a few spots. Anyone's used AI agents before, they know that they take a little bit of time to generate a response, and we'll use that time to answer questions. So feel free to put your questions in the Q&A section. You can put it in the chat. I can't guarantee I'll see it, but there's a couple other people who are watching the chat for me. And let's get started. Share. Okay. Is there a curl command we can use to download the Bob seal? Okay. Oh yeah. I think there are instructions for installing Bob. I'm not sure about the Bob CLI. I know there's been like a recent change in the Bob 2.0 that was just released. Oh, wait. I should probably hide my work calendar. That's not appropriate. Okay, so I have the spec kit from GitHub open. I have a terminal open. I've already installed spec kit. Uh, as a real quick refresher, spec kit is a way of what the idea is instead of just saying, "Hey, AI, make me a thing." Uh, you start with the specification. This is what I'd like the thing to do. Here are the edge cases. Here are like kind of the core requirements. The AI will prompt you for like follow-on information, clarifying questions to make sure it has like a really robust, clear understanding of what you're trying to do. And then once you're done with that step, it moves forward, similar to like a waterfall style software design, but the idea is that you can get through a fairly significant feature in much less time. So we're going to do specify a init, make this bigger, specify a init. We'll call this the cinema hardware. Oh no, oh, sorry. Oh, I didn't know I did it. Yeah, so you say integration, and then we're going to say Bob. We're going to use IBM Bob for the integration. I use POSIX shell. Okay. So it is set up. So I should be able to open in Bob. I will go to, sorry, I know this part's small right now, but Max Finder does not quite support zooming in there. So when you use the in it, it will create the spec kit skills that are needed for IBM Bob. And CD spec. What did I call that? Cinema. Cinema. Okay. So we see that we are in like the same. This is my terminal. This is the same file explorer. We could also use the terminal that's down here. I just prefer to use a separate dedicated terminal just to save some real estate while we're live streaming. Okay. Um, I'm not gonna do all of that stuff. Okay. So the very first step is you're logged into Bob. Sorry, I have to move some of these windows around. Oh, if you see me looking over this way, it's because that's where the Q&A windows are. So I'm just checking to make sure there's no one asking any questions. Okay. So we'll say spec net specify. Let me make this slow. And then build and so this is the part I've never done before. I've never asked Bob to create Arduino code. So this could be a very short stream. If it doesn't work, well, I'll try something else. I'll think of something else, but I think it'll work. Build an Arduino application. It's not really an application because I run the piece of hardware code uh, the, that can uh, read. How do I do? Okay. Here, I'll let everybody in on this. It'll see. Uh, for IBM Tech Exchange this year, uh, we have a themed escape room, and I'm using the Arduino to control some lights and switches and whatnot inside the room to help it feel a bit more real. So what it does is I need it to read the status of, I'm going to say 25 switches. I've intentionally made this very large. It's larger than the number of I/O ports on the device because there's a trick that you can use, so like a type of kind of multiplexing, so that you can read like a very large number of switches, like the status of them, with a very small number of pins, because it's like the intersection of a row and a column, and there's some fancy logic that goes on that makes it work. I'm curious to see if Bob knows about this. If you Google it, like it'll immediately come up. So I assume that because a lot of the LM models under the hood, um, a lot of these models under the hood are trained on the same data that should work. Somebody's asking if Bob is IBM's version of another product. And I think both Bob and Kiro took the same approach. They started to have a common ancestor in the code OSS. And I think Kiro asks you to like very specifically pick your model, and Bob has an automatic model router built into it. Um, I haven't used Kiro enough to like confidently say these are the differences between the two, but I think that's like the main difference. And uh, the other one just comes from AWS versus IBM. Um, I think that they end up with a lot of the same constraints in terms of extensions and whatnot, but yeah, they're very similar. Okay, so I'm asking that they can read the status of about 25 switches and then post an HTTP request to a known endpoint with the status of the switches. All right, so the idea is that I've got like I chose 25 because that's a square. It's 25. It's times five, so it's like a nice square number. Just for that multiplexing thing, it works out well if they're squares. I also need it to post. Now I'm intentionally trying to trip it up because the model of Arduino that you use or microcontroller you use dictates what HTTP library you can use. It's not like if you use say Python or Node.js, like Python uses a request library. Everybody uses a request library. No matter where you're running, you can use a request library. Just do pip and so on, it works. With a lot of these microcontrollers, the Wi-Fi module is slightly different in terms of what you can do for a HTTP request that I'm hoping to like kind of force Bob into asking me clarifying questions of like identify that this is at an area where we need more clarification. I'm also going to say it's an HTTPS request because it's another area where it, it is tricky. It's very difficult. Uh, and settings of the switches. Yeah, let's see what this does. Okay, so it's going to think it will. It's using the skill under the hood, and based on that skill, it's going to check if I have uh, templates or I think there's a constitution in here where you can say always use this type of framework or always use that or do test-driven development or whatever the vibe is for your team. And before it does anything, it's going to ask for permission. Yeah, so this is all saying, hey, like everything's blank so far, so I'm gonna go ahead and create the stuff. I'm gonna say approve for this task. So anytime it wants to make a directory, you can just go ahead and do it. Okay, and this will take just a couple of moments. It's checking these items. It's building the short medium switch status reporter, writing file. Does anybody have any questions? Okay, I'm just checking. Yep, cool. All right, so I wrote the file. I put that in specs and then like a feature ID. So this is the thing that any kind of VS Code based IDE will do of like if you have a folder with a folder in it and then a file, if you expand that first folder, it'll automatically expand both of them because you generally wouldn't want to like work inside of like that interstitial space. Oh, cool. And this is done and it's just telling me everything that it did. Um, okay, so let's see what's happening. No implementation details. So the idea for a specification is that you shouldn't be saying use this specific library. It's like what is the uh, uh, high level feature? What's like the customer goal? What is the vision you want to create? We'll talk about the tech details later. Uh, I see your question, John. I'll get to it in 1 second. Focus on user value, business check, no code, all mandatory sections. It will mark items as need clarification, and there are none, which makes me a little concerned. But those concerns could be unfounded. The thing I was trying to trip it up on is a specific library it would need to use. And because we're in a kind of a no code early on, like product manager level specs, that it's not too concerning that it's not asking about that yet. Uh, but that is the thing I'm going to be looking for. Acceptance scenario, scope is clearly bound. There's dependencies and assumptions. So what I like to do is you go into the spec and you can either read the markdown directly or you click on the magnifying glass and it will render the markdown. And I will scroll until I find the assumption edge cases. What happens when all the switches are on? That's fine. We'll just say they're all on. The switch is physically disconnected or indeterminate state. Okay, that's a good edge case. Network is continuously unavailable for an extended period of time. We'll just say we do nothing. Either partial malformed response from the endpoint, loses power. Okay. So these are, as it describes edge cases, things that you'd want to think about. This is where sometimes I'll say like, for the edge cases, all 25 switches being on is okay. Just report that all of them are on. And normally I'd go through uh, all of the assumptions or ones I think it needs to clarify. But for the sake of this one, I will just do the one and we'll see it gets my this prompt kind of back and forth. This is, oh, got it. Let me check to see where I was concerned about that. And we'll see it'll update the edge case to say it's no longer an edge case. It'll specifically define what happens. What do Bobcoins mean? As someone who wants to try out Bob, I'm reading through the website and I saw Bobcoins and then IBM ID required. Um, So Bob coins are, I don't want to say they're like tokens because they're treated separately as tokens. It's the throttling billing mechanism that's used. So depending on the plan that you're on, uh, you have a certain number of Bobcoins, and as we do a task like this one has so far consumed just under a single Bobcoin. Uh, this has my budget remaining is very low because I've been using it quite a bit in the last few weeks. It resets every month, but for this task that I'm on, I've used like less than a single Bobcoin so far. I expect that this task if we get all the way through the whole thing, it'll probably use about 10 Bobcoins, just based on like similar things I've done recently. Uh, it shouldn't ask about IBM ID required. Darlise put in the chat the link for the sign up, and that should let you sign up without an IBM ID. Can we use Bob in the Windows CLI? So they recently launched Bob 2.0, and I know they launched the IDE and the CLI separately. I'm not sure if the new Bob CLI is available yet. Um, let me take that as a question offline, and then I'll post it in the discussion forum. Like I'll post the question and the answer and the links in there to get you all an answer. A couple people have asked similar things about the CLI. Okay. Uh, okay. So we see that it updated the edge cases when all 25 switches are on. The device reports state as is, no special added. Uh, yeah, for the rest of these, for now, we'll ignore them. Um, and see what we say. So after we do a specify, it originally gave us, I could have just gone immediately on to the next step because everything was marked as completed of what it was looking for. And this is one of the items of no code, no chip registers, which is how stuff is moved around in the code, and then like pin numbers, how it'll actually track all 25. I'm curious to see if it assumes that it's got 25 available pins, which it should. Yeah, let's move on to plan. So we say spec plan, and you'll want to give it kind of rough guidelines. If you have like no preferences whatsoever, you can just say speculative plan, hit enter, and be done. Um, if uh, you have a thing of like, I want to use a very specific library or I want to use a very specific style of doing this for just this plan, that's where you put it here. Um, and I'll say plan, uh, this will use an Arduino Uno R4, which is the model. Um, ensure that the plan respects the number of pins available on this model, as well as Wi-Fi chip limitations. That is like the four other microcontrollers you can pass in an SSL certificate, and it will uh, treat that as trusted because it came from the person who wrote the code. With this one, it doesn't support that 'cause it's a separate chip, so there's some stuff. I think I'm getting close. I might be a little too early on the spec kit plan to say that. I think it's in the uh, either the tasks or the implement. We'll see what it says. Oh, I have a little typo in there, but it should be okay. So plans, yeah, it's using spec kit CLI on the hood. See if there's any questions in the chat. So now it's doing research. This is where it'll have agents that'll go out and like look for like the UNO R4 data sheet or like the pinout diagrams or some stuff so that it knows how many pins do I have to work with, how many input pins, how many digital pins do I have, how many analog pins do I have. So okay, here you go. So this is like the response from the sub agent. Yeah, how many digital pins does it have? Oh, interesting. So I do have the Uno R4 Wi-Fi. There is another Uno R4 that either doesn't have Wi-Fi. It might use a Ethernet jack, but so it defaulted to that probably because I said Wi-Fi. List them labeled. There's fewer than 25 pins. What is the standard approach to expand input capacity to read 25 binary switches? Shift registers, no, multiplexers. Okay, so it looks like it identified this as a problem. I have 25 pins that I need to read, and 25 switches, and I only have like 10 pins. I think 15. 15 if I really stretch it. Some of those are kind of reserved, but you can co-opt them. It looks like it's trying to purchase additional like hardware, incorporate additional hardware. There is a way to do it just with the way it's physically laid out. We'll see how it does. Uh, does it have native latest TLS 1.2, 1.3, memory RAM? Cool. So these are questions that I was hoping it would see our potential sources of ambiguity, and it's identified these as like I need the sub agent to go do this. And yeah, so let's tell it, okay, yeah, go ahead and go do this research and find me answers. And each one of these questions would be like a mini, you know, I go out and do some Googling, I get a bunch of examples, I save those bookmarks and think about how I'm going to get them to work together. Somebody asked about where they can see the webinar after it's done. I assume the link to it's going to be posted in the discussion forum or the various things for the hackathon. I'll let Darlene answer that. All right, she's typing answer. Great, thank you, Darlene. Someone asked, can Bob integrate with MCPs and skills? Yes, it can to both. So what SpecKit does is it creates skills that Bob can use for SpecKit analyze, plan, implement, specify. So we're like demonstrating and implementing with the skill. I don't have MCPs on here yet. I wasn't planning on covering this today, but it does integrate with those. Specifically the Terraform MCP. Go check that out. That's the thing HashiCorp, an IBM company, just launched. It's now live. I forgot to ask that. If that didn't answer your question, feel free to ask another one. Uh, I know I got a little bit of marketese there. And now, yeah, wants to make another directory. We'll say approved. Okay, all context loaded. Let's see. Oh, great. So here's the answers that it got from uh, the research that it did. Um, okay, so there's 14 total digital I/O pins, 6 analog pins. Uh, which can be used as digital 1 through 19, which, yes. 0 and 1 are serial. That should be okay. We're not going to use a general purpose analog. An analog pin, you can read like various current levels between like 0 and 5 volts. A digital pin is either just 0 or 5 volts. You can treat an analog pin as a digital pin by just only using 0 or 5 volts and nothing in between. Analog pins are good for like reading sensors and whatnot. But even if it uses all the analog pins as pseudo digital pins, it still doesn't have enough. Uh, so there is a way to, we won't tell Bob this because I want Bob to figure it out. But if you look up like Arduino read multiple switch matrix, you end up with something like this, where you got 4 times 4. So you got 16 switches in here, but it's only using 4 by 4, so 8 pins to read those 16. And the idea is that you apply a voltage to a column, and if a switch is closed, you will be able to read that voltage on a row. So what you do is you set a voltage on a column, and then you read all of the rows. And any row that is has the voltage on it, you know that switch is closed, and then you cycle across all those. You put a diode in there to keep a little bit of feedback down, um, and it also helps with like if 2 buttons are pressed at the same time, you can do that. So this is like a fairly well-worn path for this. I'm curious to see if Bob discovers it in its research. Uh, shift registers. Yeah, custom firmware logic, expander. Okay, is this waiting on me? Sorry, I'm gonna scroll all the way down to the end. Okay, so it says it's done. Let me see if I can't make this bigger. Sorry, where was, so it came up with an approach. Okay, we're in the plan. And then it came up with a recommendation, which was to use this expander, uh, uh, which I don't want to do because you have to like buy new hardware for that. I should be able to solve it. Um, Networking chip, preload bundle. Okay, correct library, official library. Okay, so this is roughly what we expect. Oh, someone get my socials. Cool. Yeah, feel free to put your socials on the Slack if you or in the chat if you want to connect with other people. Don't post it a bunch, but feel free to post your socials or your Devpost profile. It's also a great place to connect. Um, so it gives an example here of how to use the SSL client. It creates Wi-Fi client, the API endpoint. It's 443 standard protocol for that. So it's got this right. Memory constraints, 256 kilobytes. That should be plenty. Certificate pinning should. Here's what I was worried about. I think you technically can set the root CA certificate, but the UNO RFR comes with root CA certificates already programmed into it, so I might just skip that step when we get to it in the implementation. Okay, pull-up resistors, that's fine. Uh, Internal pull-ups. Yeah, it's got like I'm gonna change that. I think it may have accident. It may have. Oh yeah. It. This is feedback I will take to the team. Let me take a note real quick. Take a screenshot. Give me 1 second. Take a note. White text on white background. Cool. Um, D4 with a clock pin. So what it's proposing is to buy these new chips that like have the pins that are needed to connect out to all of the switches, and then those registers will, as multiplexers will like read that and then transmit like a number, like a 25-bit binary number, and then you take that binary number and then you can read the pins from that. It's great. That's probably the way most consumer electronics work. Um, for this, we don't need that. We can do this multiplexing approach. Um, so what I'm gonna do is say, I'm gonna kind of steer it. I'm gonna say, don't use additional shift registers. Use the switch matrix approach with columns and rows to read all 25 switches with 10 pins. Uh, okay, so while that's thinking, I'm gonna look at the questions. How do you make sure tracking user stays under control while generating code files? And when you catch it, it's not doing a good job while architecting the solution on top of the plan. So the question is like, how do you like, keep your token usage under control? The idea is that you do this like specify plan task implement or like the parts of spec kit that uh, you're doing fairly narrow parts and you say, okay, let's make sure we like really understand the problem that we're trying to solve and make sure that's appropriately scoped. And then from that, you say, okay, plan this part of it, and you're kind of biting off small chunks. So it limits like how much interaction or how much you're needing Bob to generate on each iteration. Um, and uh, that's how I tend to control it. The idea is that if you were to say, hey, do all of this stuff, do everything end to end, and I'm off a little bit at the beginning, it drifts as it's going through all these steps by itself, and that's wildly off, and you wasted 20 or 30 tokens. Bobcoins, sorry. Uh, yeah, so I break it up into like the specifying, architecting, breaking like tasking, like breaking up into tasks, and then implementing. Because I can say like implement just this step, and it keeps the context of the stuff we've done before, so it's fairly narrowly controlled change, and it makes it easier to review kind of what was done. Similar to having like a small diff in like a PR, a pull request. Okay, someone asked Bob. I'm involved directly into VS Code, or do we have to use a separate app? It is a separate app. It doesn't interact with VS Code. VS Code and Bob are both downstream forks of the Code OSS, the original, or yeah, Code OSS, the VS Code uh, open source version. Okay, answer this live. What specific features Bob has that other coding agents do not provide? I mean, there's a lot of features that, depending on which ones you want to compare it to, things are like unique to Bob. Um, what I could like the most is that uh, for me, it's easier to integrate it with like an existing CI/CD or a deployment pipeline. So it's not just like generating a bunch of code. Like here's code that is technically correct and you can run. It's like, well, how do I deploy this? How do I run this? And what Bob with the appropriate skills will do is integrate that with like an existing CI system. So I say, here's how I safely deploy this in a repeatable way. Okay, so it says it's done. Let's see if it figured out what I was trying to do. Five column input pins, output pins, all fitting within. I'll update. Okay, so I steered it a bit. And I said, hey, use this other thing. And it said, okay, now it understands it. I think if I used like the key terms were like matrix, columns, rows, which as we looked over here, if you go into like these examples, a lot of them refer to columns and rows. I think that's the keywords that it needed to find the right solution. The solution I was looking for. Um, and it updated the hardware prerequisites, it changed the research file. So there's a, does this. All right. I zoom in quite a bit when I'm streaming, and then it makes it a bit hard to, here we go. Here we go. Input expansion strategy, use 5 matrix and columns, 10 GPI, no additional ICs required. That's what I was looking for. Um, Scanning is fast. One column low at a time. Okay. Uh, I was expecting it to do it the other way, where it does each row at a time and then reading the columns. But doing the columns and reading the rows, it accomplishes that's the same thing, just turned on its side. That's fine. I have no strong preference there. Yeah, so I don't need to worry about the I2C bus or extra power or rail wiring, any of this nonsense. Cool, 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 cool. Oh, it gives me actual pinouts and then the index. Nice. Okay, let's yeah, matrix. And it's, oh, it looks like it already tried writing some C++ code. Oh, it says it's going to in the plan. Got it. Now let's look at the plan. So this is roughly the output. .ino is the format for the Arduino code itself, and it uses C++, so it's going to have C++ and header files. Payload reporter, cool. Yeah, so I like this plan. Um, so let's move on to tasks, and this is where it'll break this down into tasks. Uh, so this is generally where you would say like break these up into tasks where like no task is larger than like a 2 minute I don't know, 2 minutes, like a 2-day task, or if you have in your constitution a thing that says we use this kind of story pointing, all tasks should be below this size. You say each task item should be independently testable, that kind of stuff. Just for the sake of time, because we're quarter of the hour now, I'm just gonna let it run free on this part. Uh, I probably shouldn't say it because this is Google's hackathon, but I have not used Google's anti-gravity IDE. I've heard a lot of great things about it. I've heard it feels like magic. I just haven't had a chance to use it. Um, but the way Bob handles, multi-file code bases is that you can, um, it shouldn't affect it if I do this. So you can do like an @ symbol and specify a file. So I can say like, um, a folder. If I say, hey, check out this folder, or I can say, um, let's go kind of deep inside of contract. Oh, it hasn't generated any code yet because we haven't gotten to the implement, but you can like do an @ sign for a file and it'll like understand that file is deeply nested and say, is it this one you want? You say yes, and then it pulls that into context. So it knows that is a file you want considered specifically for this task. Okay, I see there's chat. Hello, Fanuel. Give 2 minutes. We really appreciate short survey. Yes, please. There's a survey in the chat. Please fill it out. If you're watching this later, maybe there's a survey. If there is, fill it out. If there's not, uh, say something nice about me on the internet. I'm sure I'll find it. Say something nice about Darlise on the internet too. I'm sure she would appreciate it. Okay, so it's loaded all the documents, it's generating tests. Okay, and it breaks this up into phases. It keeps trying to auto scroll. There's 21 tasks, setup, foundational, and then the user stories. Um, what I've seen it typically do is it's able to identify this line right here, maybe between 2 and 3 or 3 and 4, is like the minimum viable product. You could technically stop here, or you could deploy it and see if it feels right at this stage. So you don't implement all of the phases and then realize it was a little bit off. And this comes back to the original question about how do you control the usage of coins? Don't, now that it's done this, don't just say like spec kit implement uh, and then just run this. For here, it didn't break that up into like this is the MVP, but what I do is the setup is usually just like I think it might even tell us. Oh, see that's MVP phases 1 through 3 only, which makes sense. Setup foundation and then the reporting. Uh, uh, to work. Uh, and then all the tasks are created, so there should be a tasks file again. Open in the wrong window, we'll go to tasks, close this, and then this is where it'll show us uh, phase one setup. This is just creating the directories, creating the files. There's nothing actually in them yet. Updates README with that. Foundational, it tells you it's blocking. You need to do the prerequisites first because this is things like you have to create the directory structure before you can put the contents, tell it, hey, use this specific method, use this item. Device connects to Wi-Fi, syncs the network time protocol, prints the IP, epoch to serial monitor, no switch reading or HTTP. Yeah, that's totally reasonable. When I was doing this like artisanal by just writing the code, that's what I did. I got the Wi-Fi working first. I got the SSL on the Wi-Fi working. Then I had it printing the IP. So this is mirroring what I would do as an engineer, and then just writing files. I don't care if it's correct or not. I don't care if it's getting the right values. Just like let me do a post request and get a decent response. Yeah, there's an interval of milliseconds. Uh, yeah, it's saying where it's going to put these files. Secure transmission. Yeah, we're using SSL client, endpoint host. A lot of stuff with the root CSR we can probably ignore later. And failure and retry. So this is like broken down like a very big, like, how do I do this? So like there's a lot of moving parts into this, into like a list of tasks. At this point, even if I didn't have like an AI assistant, I've got enough tasks set aside that okay, I'll do. I don't know if it creates a table. Oh, wait, maybe it's just because of the theme. So you can like check them off with like an X in here once you finish that task if you wanted to do it manually or I'm not saying LLMs struggle with some code, but at some point you're like, you know what, I'll just do this one myself and I'll let it pick up from there. You can do that. Just mark it as complete. It'll see that it's done and uh, kind of move on to the next step afterwards. Somebody's asking, can I use an X IBM ID to get access? I don't think so. I think you have to use the Devpost access mechanism that's set up because as part of like the prizes, we can track who signs up through Devpost and connect that to usage of Bob to a specific hackathon entry. So we know like who used Bob and how much and how do they use it as part of deciding like which projects are eligible for the Bob prizes specifically as opposed to the other prizes. It's a lot. Are there any specific settings or mode planning practices to use IBM Bob to prevent running out of tokens at a crucial stage near deadline of this submission? Um, so it tells you how many you have left here, and this is where I would say, like, if you get kind of two, let's say you get to this stage and you've done a bunch of other stuff and you're low on the tokens, uh, you can like because it gives you the task and says, hey, define this like this in this place. You can do some of these items manually just to get across that. Oh, where did that go? Oh, where was that? Sorry, I'm trying to find the thing where it said oh, I'm sorry, over here. The MVP scope. So let's say you're like you've done one in tasks or phases one, two, and most of three, but you've got, task 12 left and you're completely out of tokens, or you're getting close, you're afraid you're gonna run out of tokens. Because it's specified exactly like the steps that are coming next, you could do like the last one or two if that's what it takes to get you across the finish line. If you're near the deadline and you're very low on tokens, reach out to me on Discord or on the Discord discussion forum. I'll talk to the people running the hackathon on the IBM side and see if we can't refresh some of those tokens for you. Uh, if you're running low, if you still have like 100, you're like, oh, I'd like more. Probably not going to give you more. But if you're, down to one token and you've been doing quite a bit, I'll figure something out. Cool. So we have 8 minutes left. So I'm not going to move on to the implementation for this. I'm going to do the implement offline, and then I'll post kind of the code base for this. I'll put it on GitHub. I'll make it public. Anyone can read it, just to see kind of what Bob did. I'll also post my interactions with Bob, so you can see kind of how I responded to some of that. We just don't have time in the session today. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. Um, answered this one live. Done. More introductions in the webinar chat. Cool. If anyone has any last minute questions, please do the survey that Darley's put in the chat. Um, do it a few times. I don't know if you can do it a few times, but just if you have positive things to say, do it a bunch. If you have negative things to say, go for a walk. Maybe you don't take the survey. I'm just kidding. Negative stuff helps too.
Amazing. Thank you so much, Richard. And thanks for everyone for hanging on. Like, this was a really great session. I'm really glad we were
Cool.
able to do that. Awesome. All
Awesome.
right, so this is a wrap. Unless, Richard, you had anything else?
No, I'm in the Discord, the discussion forum. Um, I don't log into the discussion forum. I see the questions, I answer them. I think people from DevPost answer like on my behalf, just so I don't have like another login to keep track of. But I do see those. I am there. If you have any questions, feel free to post them. Mention IBM Bob, mention IBM or Bob. I will see it. If I miss it, the DevPost team is really good about saying, "Hey, here's a thing," and we'll get those questions answered.
Awesome. Amazing. Thank you so much, everyone. And then just a note, like I said, this was recorded. It will be on our YouTube. So if you want to rewatch it or if you want to share it with a teammate who may have missed it or anyone who's maybe still on the fence about joining, you can share this session. It will be recorded, but we'll also send it via email as well. And like Richard said, if you had any questions coming up after this, find us in Discord. I just posted that link in the chat. Also, you can use the hackathon discussion forum as well. But Richard is basically in our Discord, so that's literally another reason to join our Discord. But hopefully, I don't have to convince you anymore. Last thing, huge thank you to IBM and especially Richard for spending this time with us. We really, really appreciate it. Hope to do many more build sessions with you all in the future. And to everyone building this week, good luck, whatever stage you're at. If you're getting started, if you're kind of deep in the weeds of everything, if you're still deciding what to build, I'm really excited to see what these projects are going to look like at the end of this. So if you're feeling nervous about it, talk to us in Discord. Let us see how we can unblock you. And we look forward to seeing you at the next build session. There's going to be build sessions throughout the rest of the week as well. So you can check out all the information about that on the hackathon page as well. All right. Thank you, everyone.